Yeah, you're right.
I would like to call the Fairfield County Council regular meeting to order, Winsboro, South Carolina, Monday, October 11th, 2021, at 6:00 p.m. Can we get approval of the agenda?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and second for the approval of the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Let the record show 7-0. Now we have invocation by Councilman Cornelius Robinson.
Let us bow our heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us few to gather in best interest of the county. In Jesus' name, we ask you to guide us and continue us on the correct path. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We're down to item 4, approval of minutes. Can we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and second that the minutes be approved. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Public presentations, none. First public comment, Ms. Roberts, we have any?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of council. We have two persons signed up to speak, Ms. Yvette Howard on ordinance number 775 and Mr. Randy Bright, ordinance number 777.
Good evening, council. I'm Yvette Howard, a resident of Winsboro, Fairfield County, District 7. Thank you for the decision that you made 2 weeks ago to sell certain property to Eau Claire Cooperative Healthcare Centers. I encourage you to continue to keep the health and well-being of the residents of Fairfield County in mind when you, as a body, make decisions. If your mission is the same as some other divisions of this county government, that is providing overall health, safety, and welfare for the community, you are going in the right direction. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Can we have someone else?
Mr. Randy Bright.
Randy Bright, District 1, Fairfield County. All the evidence indicates on the installment plan process, the county council did not do their due diligence. They did not look out for the taxpayers. They did not look out for the counties, and they did not do the job that they are supposed to do, and that's get the very best for the county. If you're looking out for the very best for the county, you're going to follow as prescribed in your own procurement manual, the process to get bids, requests for proposals, to ensure that we get the best deals from a competitive price standpoint, from a competitive influence standpoint, and from a competitive advice standpoint. And you can't get that unless you get bids. There's no one that knows what's out there in those particular situations. And if you don't know, then you investigate. And the way you investigate is to get bids, is to get requests for proposals. Instead, all evidence, And then if I'm wrong, then we've got a transparency issue, which we do anyway, but this would just add to the transparency issue. If I'm wrong, that transparency issue transcends or continues what's happening. But all indications are that we just didn't do our due diligence and look out for the taxpayer, look out for the county, look out for what's best for us. No, what did we do? We went directly to the firm that helped get us in this trouble to begin with the refinancing, without stop and go, without doing investigation. The refinance is a good idea. The refinance not being investigated, not getting the best deal for the county is a terrible idea and is a dereliction of duty. Look out for the county, guys. And I don't know what the deal is. It's in your own manual. There's pages on bidding processes in the procurement manual. Why don't we follow our own procurement manual and do bids? Or if I'm wrong, then why aren't we more transparent? A lot more transparent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Roberts. We're down to item 7, public hearings, none. Number 8, ordinance, resolution, and orders. A, third and final reading, orders number 777, modifying the installment plan of finance, authorizing and executing certain documents with the Fairfield Facilities Corporation and other related matters. Can we get a motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Ms. Bass, do you want to say, got any comments on this?
No, sir.
All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposed is the same.
Nay.
So let the record show there's 4-3 or 5-2.
5-2.
Okay, 5-2. Second reading ordinance number 775 to approve the sale of certain parts of land known as the hospital property and other related matters.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Nay.
So let the record show there's 6-1. Item C, second reading, orders number 779, in order to make supplement appropriation from the fund balance to purchase compactor receivers for the MAC and the Ridgeway recycling area.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposers? Let the record show 7-0. Board and commission minutes, Fairfield Chamber of Commerce. Board and commission appointments. For the zoning board of appeals, do we have a motion?
So move, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Okay, that person that now, for this appointment is Roger A. Gaddy, 213 West High Street, Winsboro, South Carolina. I think that's in Mr. Robertson District.
That's correct.
Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Let the record show 7-0. Okay, old business none, new business none, county administrator report. Ms. Bass.
For items A and B, I think Mr. Ed Driggers is going to report on. And I believe you've received the information. It's been distributed for B. I think it was already distributed.
Okay, we have the My Zion update by Mr. Driggers.
Yes.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of council. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. We are well moving into the final stages of our work over at the Mount Zion site. We are at the point now that we do feel that we're comfortable that the general contractor is on their prescribed schedule for substantial completion. And we're looking, and that's actually happening in phases relative to the different facilities that are there. So a couple examples of that would be the annex building, which many refer to as the cafeteria building. That building already has a temporary certificate of occupancy, substantially complete, ready to do the punch list on that particular building as well. We're moving well relative to the auditorium, the gymnasium, the gym annex at the rear of the gymnasium as well. Each of those will have substantial completion about mid-November for those particular facilities. And then we'll move over to what's called the classroom space, which will be your administrative offices and other operations of the county. Third floor is substantially complete. Still got some things to do relative to painting and some technology issues that are up in that area. Second floor, a little bit behind that. Third floor, a little bit behind that. The teacherage is the last piece of that project that we are looking to complete. And so we believe that we'll see final areas of construction relative to those last components around December 21st, substantial completion. Again, we will be doing punch list prior to that. And so many of the things that we would see in our walkthroughs of the property, we'll be able to address those, and the general contractor will then have the opportunity to go in and start making many of the final repairs, adjustments. And typically those are going to be cosmetic items. It's very unusual that you'd find anything at that stage other than paint, trim, floor, maybe some ceiling tiles that may just need to be adjusted or whatever. But they become very, very small at that point. So we try, where we are at this point in, let's say, mid-October, knowing that we're about 60 days out from final substantial completion. We really are now just monitoring what's going on. And that's a really big piece of what needs to happen out there. So just visually, I'll share with you that every couple of weeks, we receive from the general contractor their construction schedule. And so we monitor that on a day-to-day basis so that as they've indicated, certain trades may need to be coming in. We're monitoring if those trades are actually there on site when they're scheduled to be there. If they're behind, then we're monitoring what the reason is for that to be behind. And we're not seeing anything on the schedule today that gives us any substantial concern. There's a couple of items that are a little behind schedule, but it's days, not weeks. And so the schedule is moving along very, very well for the entire site. And so we are anticipating that we'll be able to have certificates of occupancy issued by year end. And that enables us then to start making the plans for a relocation into that facility in January, starting in January of 2022. We have determined, because of limited resources, that it's going to be best to do that relocation in a sequential manner based on different types of operations. What I had originally hoped is that we would maybe be able to do a weekend move into that facility. But it's just clear that we're not going to be prepared to do that, primarily from having all of our systems ready to be utilized by our various departments and our employees. And so to allow our IT department to be able to make sure that we're getting computers and monitors and printers, all of those things in place where we need, we will be doing that literally by department basis after the first of the year. Some of that will depend on receipt of furniture, fixtures, and equipment that's going to be necessary there. One of those primary areas is going to be the 911 center. We have consoles and radios and that type of equipment that has to be installed. We have antennas that have to be affixed to the building. And so everything is in that sequencing order for us now as we're continuing to move forward with that. Some of the things that we've had to spend a considerable amount of time on recently is really areas related to technology, making sure that all of the facilities can communicate through our data center that will be on site there. We've got to just make sure that the classroom building, that there's communications also with the auditorium where council chambers will be located. Also that where we have communications capability in the gymnasium area, the gymnasium annex, the cafeteria building, the activity center that's over there. And so in the original scope of services, all of those connections weren't there. And so as we discovered that those were not in place, it was very critical for us to be able to identify that work that needed to be accomplished and start planning for that. And so we certainly recognize that we can't occupy a facility without the full capability to be able to go in there and run everything through our communication system, through our IT systems as well. So an enormous amount of time and effort has really been getting us to the point that we feel comfortable that there are no gaps, that everything will communicate where it's necessary and appropriate, and that staff is informed about what those needs are as well. So those are a couple of the larger things that we're having to identify. I know one of the things that has been questioned repeatedly, and rightly so, parking has continued to be a major issue and concern in that facility. Parking was reduced from the original scope of work, the original plan for that site. And the reason for that is when the civil engineers came in and calculated the amount of stormwater that would need to run off of the site, we are required under our stormwater requirements through DHEC, that stormwater has to be slowed down before it goes into creeks and areas. And so retention ponds needed to be constructed on the site. The only alternative to doing that would have been to do underground retention. That is a very, very expensive alternative. And so earlier on, decisions were made that parking would be reduced at the site to allow for those retention ponds that needed to be there. There are two, one right behind the teacherage, one right behind the activity center. And those are necessary. You have to maintain and manage stormwater runoff on a site like this. And again, the permits are issued by DHEC. And the county is obligated, because you do not have your own MS4 or your own stormwater management system as a county, then you fall under the guidelines and the overview of DHEC. And so again, those are requirements that were placed upon the county to be able to get that proper stormwater. So, but it did reduce the parking on the site, and we had grave concerns about that. As Mr. Calder and I continue to review what some of our alternatives were, recognizing that budget is obviously a primary concern as we continue to finalize this project, but we needed parking. So one of the alternatives for us to consider was to do some on-street parking there, and I'm actually drawing a blank. The street that runs in front of the building is that street? Walnut Street, excuse me. So Walnut Street was already, had a little more width to it than a typical city street, a typical municipal street. It was already under the jurisdiction of the county. And so it was a street that you have responsibility for anyway. So the idea was to go to the town of Winnsboro and request of them either through a fee simple, you know, a deed, or through a right of way, or through an encroachment, but to allow the county to expand that road area to include the parallel parking that could take place there. It's actually perpendicular parking. And so the point in that is that we were able to get 31 parking spaces along the street that we did not have before, got our numbers back up very close to what we would have anticipated in the original plans for the site. And we're able to do it at a very, very good price. Typically, a single car space, surface space, will run you between $8,000 and $12,000 per space. And that's just market rate. And when I say varies between 8 and 12, that's simply because you've got to look at what your topography is in the area. We had some challenging topography there. So we probably would have been on the upper end of that if we needed to construct surface parking lot, additional parking lot in the area. Town of Winnsboro was very cooperative with us, allowed us to again, either by right of way or encroachment, whatever that need may be, but allowed us to go ahead and move forward. If you go by the site today, you will see that curb and gutter is already poured along Walnut Street to allow us to get 31 additional parking spaces directly in front of the building. That was a major accomplishment. And we were able to do that for about $1,500 a parking space, a substantial savings to the county of what you would have seen if you had to do, again, a surface lot. So felt very, very good about being able to get that worked out. In addition to that, the town also allowed us to expand the gravel lot that's there that they already have in place that services the walking trail system. The county has resources to put in crusher run and also wheel stops in that area. Really inexpensive, particularly using our own labor and our own resources, the county's labor and resources. That's going to be a very economical alternative for us as well. We will be able to triple the number of vehicles that they previously were able to get in that lot simply by organizing the lot, by getting very designated spaces for the vehicles on both sides. We were able to add additional handicap parking there as well that will serve, not only will it serve the Mount Zion site, and the activity center that's there, but it will also, when that building isn't open and the public's using it as a walking trail, it will also provide for additional handicap parking for folks that are using that. What I would certainly call a win-win, a great opportunity through an intergovernmental agreement between the town of Winnsboro and Fairfield County, because both get advantage from that, and we're able to accomplish that at a much, much lower cost. And so we're continuing to look for those types of opportunities, whether it's sidewalk in the area or anything else that may need to happen. But we know that as we prepare for you to move into that facility, the facility has to be 100% ready for all utilities, all technologies that must be there. And so that's where we're really honing in at this point, making sure that the fiber is where it needs to be, that Wi-Fi is being planned for where it needs to be, that connections are where it needs to be, that we have access control in that facility where it needs to be, because originally that included only the classroom building. But we have to provide for access control in the gym and the activity area because we're going to have children there and we can't have people just walking in those doors. So we have to have access control that's there as well. What we're planning for now is making sure that we are completely evaluating what your FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment needs are. We know that there's going to be a need for equipment in that gymnasium. We know there's going to be a need for desks, chairs, those types of things in the activity center. For the most part, your office areas are well taken care of. There's very little equipment that we believe is actually going to be needed to purchase for individuals to move into offices. Now, what we have discovered in our process of going in and measuring every single space in the new building, coming back to this facility and measuring every space that's currently being used, and then measuring the furniture that we currently have, we know that we can use our current equipment in many of those places, not everywhere, but in many of the places. And so we've communicated with county staff that the actual office furniture that they have today may not be the office furniture that they have in the space that they go into the new building, because we may have to put it in a room that it best fits. But by doing that, we believe that we are being really good stewards of your resources so that we are absolutely minimizing what any of those new purchases will need to be. You will need to make some purchases, and that certainly will be, that'll be coming up for us as we're determining that. But we're working on that piece of it now. And the last piece for us to start pulling together as we know January comes forward is for us to actually plan for the physical relocation. We will need outside resources to help us physically move people and equipment to that site as well as what types of equipment, technologies that we have in this facility that may be getting relocated over there as well. But it's moving well at this point. It's now moving on schedule according to the current schedules. It's moving well in that area, and we're very, very pleased with that. So that's really where we are relative to Mount Zion.
Any questions from council? I have quite a few.
Yes, Mr. Driggers. First, I think the question that most people have on mind is cost. So kind of update us on what those cost factors are and exactly where we are.
Yeah, you have completely depleted the escrow funds that were available for this project. Most of those funds were primarily used in two areas. One was for the upfit of the space for the 911 center. Those construction costs to allow for that upfit that was changed in the project. That was a large piece of this, as well as a large part of the reason for delays on the project as well. General conditions and all needed to be adjusted for that. The other really large expense.
But mention how much was that that escrow was depleted? How much it was? 1 million, right?
I don't know the exact number, but I think it was in the million, right at $1 million.
It was a
Yes.
million.
Yes.
Yes. So the first, I don't know if it was the first, the last draw that was made against that escrow account was for $820,000 of that million. In that 820 was the audiovisual cost for the auditorium and the chambers that are there. That was about $191,000 just on the equipment side of it. The remaining part of that 820 was almost exclusively for the 911 center, and that was out of 820. We have about 110,000 that we're making payment on now. Those change orders have been mostly relevant to the change with the teacherage from an office to an assembly area. That was about, I don't have numbers in front, about 40,000, I believe, was about the number that was there. So as we start putting together change orders that have been necessary in the last 3 months or so, it's gotten us to the point that we have depleted those. Now, when I say depleted, the account today isn't zero, but we have invoices that will take it to zero. And then actually some deficit that's there. And of course, and you still have expenses that will be associated with the physical move. You'll have expenses associated with these technology issues that we've discovered that we did not have connectivity throughout the site, the access issues. You'll have costs associated with that. And then you'll have any outstanding furniture, fixtures, and equipment that'll be required for the activities, the gymnasium, the gym annex, and then like a very small amount that'll be needed for some office furniture. I'll give you an example. The plans have always included that the council chambers would have a dais that could be broken down, that the dais could be disassembled and moved to the wings of the stage so that the stage could be a multi-purpose area to use for other things. Well, somewhere, I don't know where, but somewhere, the county didn't proceed with getting that constructed. And so we know today,
What do you mean? The
It-
county didn't get?
well, what I'm saying is no one was issued a purchase order to build those modular council desks. And so for you to meet there, we've got to provide equipment for you to be able to meet there so that you can use the technology that is in that space. Now, I don't think that's going to be one of your larger expenses. Your technology has been some of those larger. We're probably at about 120, 130,000 or so on technology, what I would call misses that we're going to have to do to make sure that the building can communicate with itself and with other people to do the business of the county. Some of those misses have to be accounted for. I think where the question was going is, where are we in total? I don't know. I don't know where we are in total because we're trying to figure out, are there reimbursements that can be made to the county relative to any of the 911 cost. I think there can be some relative to equipment, consoles, those types of things, radios, but the upfit for the building to be able to house 911, I'm advised that is not a reimbursable expense. And so we have these areas where, when I say we, it's because I'm on your team. And so when I'm saying we, I really am speaking on behalf of Fairfield County, is that there are resources that are dedicated for 911. And it may be that we need to use those 911 resources to accommodate getting 911 in this facility. And so we're looking at all of those pieces right now, holistically. What's critical, at least from my perspective, in the services that I'm providing to Brad, is really looking at the bigger picture. Mount Zion and the courthouse and other projects are all priorities. They're projects that you've got commitments for, you're under contract, and you have contractual obligations to finish these projects. And you'll be able to do that. But I do believe that we have to look even at a larger picture of that. And that is something that Ann and I have been working very, very closely on, is looking at the complete overall financial position of the county. Looking at your fund balance, all special funds, any reserve funds, any allocations, any commitments that are there that haven't gone to contract yet. And so I call those buckets. And so what we're needing to do is we've got to look at everything that's out there that either we have committed to do or you have indicated you desire to do. We're looking at every one of those and we're allocating cost to those and working really hard to be realistic that we need to make sure that the costs that we use in that evaluation, that those are actual doable cost.
Okay, let's go back a minute though. Let's because one of the things you say is Because one of the things you told me earlier is it's amazing how much stuff we've missed. So,
We've missed a lot.
yeah, so in dealing with that, what is the expected cost out of the, because the 1 million came out of the county's pocket. How much money, other than the payments, that we are expected to I guess, to spend to get into Mount Zion?
I don't have that exact number, and I would be very reluctant at this point to give you a number because it would be hypothetical. And I would much rather have that accuracy. If I'll make a commitment that we will advise you what we know. That we can either do that in a communication directly with council, or we can have that information brought back to you at your next meeting, whatever is council's desire. But we need to itemize everything that we now know that we did not account for prior, so that we definitely know what those costs are. But one of those things to consider as well is, do we have resources available like 911? Do we have resources that are restricted for 911's use that we can indeed use to reimburse the escrow funds for that use? And if that happens, you now have money. And when I say reimburse, we really won't take an empty account and put money back in it. But the point is that we're able to use that money for allowed uses. And by doing that, it opens the door that we may indeed have sufficient resources that will allow us to do those things that were not in the original scope that are now necessary to complete the building. And we think that would be a best case scenario, is that we're not requesting to dip farther into fund balance, but using restricted or allocated resources in other funds because they're allowed for use out of those funds. And personally, I think that would be a good scenario. And so we're taking that on farther to look at, again, so when I say that the evaluation isn't only for Mount Zion or for the courthouse project, which are, and the reason I concentrate on those, because those are projects that you have under contract. You have contractual obligations with general contractors for those projects. And so we have a responsibility to fulfill that, those commitments. What I'm looking for you is a strategy. What I'm really looking for is a financial strategy that allows you to look past where you are right now, but allows you to look at the other things, a fire station, equipment that you may need going forward, recreation facilities, whatever those things may be. To be able to do those, you need to clearly identify and agree on where those resources are going to come from. And part of that is also understanding your cash flow. And so I'm working very, very close with Ann as we're looking at fund balance relative to cash flow. And are there recommendations, are there things that you can do going into 2021, 22 that gives you greater flexibility than you would have if you don't do some of those things? And so that's what I'm preparing. It is, and I really would like to do that ultimately in a workshop for council, so that we can exclusively look at the long-term financial picture of the county, of where we are today, what commitments there are today for use of funds going forward, again, so that there is a clear financial picture of where you are now and where you're going. And that can be done. But we're compiling the data.
Mr. Driggers,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. Mr. Driggers, I know how important that is to really to get all of the information and to take a look at our financial health and what our expenditures may be and how that relates to the fund balance and all of that. At this particular point in time, I think what we're trying to do is make sure that we have the correct characterization of expenses that we're going to have moving forward for Mount Zion
Sure,
itself.
sure.
Because I think, we need to know what our responsibilities are going to be. As you said, we have contractual agreements for these things.
Yeah.
And I think that, whether it's a work session with council or some other avenue, that we really have to get together and we have to really look at the figures.
Absolutely.
Because at this particular point in time, I think we've gone back and forth and saying what was covered under 911. And now we're learning that what we were told was covered under 911 is not necessarily covered under 911. So I think when we take a look at these kinds of things, what we're going to need from you is some firm numbers going forward to kind of take a look at how we end up in Mount Zion in January.
Right.
With furniture and all of those kinds of things, and what it's going to cost to get us there.
I want to be as accurate as possible with that number, but I certainly would rather over project than under project, because I don't think you're in a position that you want any more surprises.
Correct.
And so I absolutely understand that. And so we're trying to look at whether it's the museum, the teacherage, or it's the gymnasium, or the annex, or the activity center, or the spaces. The bulk of our future expenses are for the operations of the camp. We are really past the point of change orders relative to construction. We've got that pretty nailed down, and we're finalizing that. And so we think that is very minimal at this point going forward. It's now the operation side that isn't related to the general contractor or the developer. It's those things that it takes to run your business from that facility. And we're working on, and we're getting those numbers now. I mean, even today, we were looking at what does it cost to get a scoreboard, basketball goals? Do we want to put bleachers in that gymnasium? Do we, it's those types of things that we're identifying.
Excuse me, are you telling me there's no bleachers
No, sir.
or goals
Nope,
in the project at all?
nope. No, sir, they're not. They were not identified in the scope of work for the developer or the general contractor.
How could you call it a gym?
I can't defend it, sir. We would have assumed that type of equipment is necessary to operate a gymnasium as well, but it was not in the scope of work with your developer or with your contractor, general contractor. And I say that loosely because the general contractor is not the county's general contractor. He works exclusively for the developer. And then the county has a relationship with the developer. General contractor does not report to the county.
Mr. Driggers, Ms. Green, you have another question before I ask mine?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
One of the things that the sheriff department came to us some weeks ago and talked to us about, I guess his safety concerns about not going to the Mount Zion campus. Okay, one of the things I asked for Mr. Caller to do was to make sure we look at the cost before we made that decision. One of the things we did is we put that report, and you've seen the report.
Yes, sir.
Looked like to me it was about you say it's about $5.2 million. To do something with the building that we're currently in. And so it appears to me, and like you and I talked earlier, it appears to me that ship have already sailed. Because I don't understand, because let me, since you're talking about all the finance, I wrote some numbers down too. And I cannot understand exactly how that we got in the position, but if you've been looking at the numbers, you know our finances are just in terrible shape. In 2016, our budget was 33 million, which we had a fund balance of 21 million. But in 2017, the budget was 38 million, jumped $5 million. In 2018, the budget went to 40 million. In 2019, the budget went to 45 million. Okay, in June of 2020, the fund balance was 13 million. Okay, now I realize we put $4 million at the for the hospital escrow. Okay, but in that year, we had the fund balance in 2020 budget. It was 46 million. Okay, and we appropriated from the fund balance 5.2 million. So in June of this year, when the last budget year ended, we only got $10 million. I want y'all to look at that. We went from a $21 million fund balance. Now we're down to a $10 million fund balance. Prior to January, we was having a spend rate about 2.7 million. Okay, that would have left us only about 3.7 months to operate. So we did cut the budget. But when we cut the budget, we cut it from the $46 million that they had the previous year down to 42 million. Okay, now because we cut the spend rate and we got some money from the settlement money, it's going to take us over into probably the end of November or December when we start getting funds. Okay, there is so much that happened. I cannot understand how we went from a $21 million fund balance down to a $10 million fund balance. Okay, over them years and just spending money. And then when we appropriated the $5.2 million from the fund balance to make the $46 million budget, we slid another $1 million, okay, in escrow for Mount Zion, even without council knowledge. Now, according to Ms. Bass, she told me, she told people that the expenses were going up while the revenues were going down. Okay, now, here we are in a situation where the sheriff bring to us safety concerns concerning Mount Zion. Okay, and we as a county can't do anything to help that situation because in just in about 4.5 years, the county have went from very prosperous to broke. So that's the kind of situation that we're up against. Okay, and the citizens need to understand what happened. Okay, and in the middle of that, we spent another $6 million from the bond during that 2017 to 2020. Another $6 million out of the bond. So then now, we get a contract on the courthouse. Okay, we allocated $1.8 million for the courthouse. They got the bond in 2013, 2014. The courthouse was one of the things on there to do. They didn't do it. Okay, and now we only have $4.2 million in the bond. Okay, why? Who would sign a contract for $5.3 million for the courthouse, and then we don't have a $10 million at the end of the budget year to operate until we start collecting taxes? I mean, it is absolutely ludicrous that we have taken this county from being very prosperous to almost broke. And the people that did this work were the brilliant ones. We always talk about how brilliant they were, how they did this, how they did that, and see what the shape we're in now. And I'm not upset with you.
Oh, I take no offense.
Mr. Driggers. And I really thank you for bringing this information to us. But the more we dig, the worse we see that have happened to us. and now we left with situations that we got to deal with. And yes, sir, one of the things we will be doing, we're going to be looking at financial strategies, and we will not do anything without understanding what the cost of it and what it's going to do. And so I thank you for doing that. But and one of the things you told me is in the courthouse is that even with the $5.3 million, the courthouse situation is we got to spend money on removing the utilities.
As well as there's been no arrangements for technology at the courthouse as well.
So I can't understand what people were thinking about and what they were doing. And you see, Ms. Ball, I'm not supposed to do that, so I'll leave it alone.
Any other questions? And really relative to the courthouse, we're trying to work out the issue about the utilities. That is, it's a pretty major issue for us. We had a gas line and an electrical line at the rear of the parking lot where the new building is going to sit. And the building would actually encroach onto that right of way. We've been able to work it out with the town of Winnsboro to relocate the electrical and disconnect the gas line. It can be serviced from another area. Our holdup at this point is relative to telephone and cable services that are there. You have the great pleasure here of working with two utility companies relative to that type of utility, True Vista and Frontier. It's getting those types of utilities to get issues resolved for relocation is not always an easy task. And so we're trying to get that really an initial meeting with them so we can discuss what does that mean to us. But for your knowledge, there is no allocation of resources in the scope of work with your general contractor on the courthouse project for relocation of utilities, nor is there any allocation in that contract for technology in that building. So we know that will have to be addressed. But other than that, the good news is that the courthouse is a guaranteed maximum price project. And so
Excluding the utilities.
does not include the utilities.
Right.
No.
So that means,
Well, yeah,
But
but we will not be getting change orders unless you change the scope. You won't get change orders from the contractor. Say, for example, material costs went up 30%. That's them. That's not us.
but we're going to have to pay for that utility move.
But if there is a cost related to the utility relocation, it will be the county's responsibility to do that. Because the utility was already in place and we're dislocating where it currently is. We're taking the overhead that's in that parking lot behind the courthouse. We're taking those overhead infrastructure out, getting that buried underground. But we've got to get off the footprint. The footprint of the building is where those exist today. So we've absolutely not even attempted to start to put together numbers there, because until we know from Frontier and from True Vista what those costs will be, we don't know. And so we're trying to get them to the table to help us with that.
One of the things I did is I presented to council a decision-making framework. And so I would like to have your views, Mr. Driggers, before while you still with us, to talk about how we make decisions for council and develop projects going forward.
Well, I think the point that you made earlier is spot on, is that to evaluate any project that has a financial implication, there needs to be a clear identification of what the funding source will be for that. And so when council, again, policy issues, I've talked with your staff about this on multiple occasions, is really understanding, staff has a role in assisting you to make sure that you have accurate data. And your role is to be policymakers and to set the agenda and the policy of how this county moves forward. And the council is not to be involved in the day-to-day operations of the management of the county, nor is the staff to be involved in the policy making of the council. Those are two very separate responsibilities. You have a fiduciary responsibility defined by state law. That fiduciary responsibility means that you need to have all the information that you need to make decisions. And then the process works the way it's supposed to work. You have a 7-member council, and a majority of council determines how the council moves forward. That's how the system works. And so I may personally disagree with the decision that's made. Some member of staff may, some member of the public may. But you're a duly elected body of Fairfield County, and that responsibility rests with the county. My role that Brad's asked me to assist with is to assist in to make sure that you have up-to-date, accurate, usable information, and to set a plan forward so that you can do that strategically versus on a case-by-case basis. So that you're not looking at any one project, you're looking at all of your projects. And that allows you to look at your timing. So it could be that you do everything that you say you want to do, but you have to consider what the timing will be because of cash flow purposes and reserves and those types of things. It can be done, but it has to be intentional.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think the third item under the county administrative reports, item C, is the millage and the local option sales tax. We already passed the ordinance for the millage, but it's just the time at which Peggy will release the bills. And so I think you just basically need to vote to accept that. And the final local option sales tax money, it doesn't all come in until, into August. And so we've been able to actually calculate that credit that will go on the tax bills as well.
Again, as Ms. Bassett said, Mr. Caller sent all of you the letter, and I've already signed it indicating that the millage is what we said it was.
Yes.
Do we need a formal vote on that, Ms. Bass?
I think you do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the 2021, 2022 millage rate as set and the local option sales tax be approved.
Second.
It's been moved and second. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. Let the record show 7-0. And again, everyone had the package on there. One of the things we did is take you got the old update, and then you got the new update around what it would cost for the building here. Again, I believe based on the cost of where we are and the money we have, it appears that that ship has already sailed. So, since everything remains the same, there's no need to vote. So it appears that the sheriff will be going to the new, complex. We're now down to county council time.
Mr. Bill,
Yes, sir.
I just want to put on the record that, Mr. Bill seems very frustrated and stated a lot of numbers about the recent years and the fund balance and the problems that we're going through. But keep in mind, 1 month into the fiscal year, $1 million was taken out of the fund balance for playground equipment, mini park, and a new roof. All three could have waited. He wasn't complaining when he was spending that $1 million.
Ms. Bass, I will let you tell, Mr. Paul that no money has been spent.
No, we have not yet done the roof or the parks.
And let me go ahead and answer that question so the citizens can understand. One of the things we did, we looked at the rescue money coming, and you can't put the rescue money in a fund balance. So what you have to do is look at how you can spend the money. So we got a roof, a DHS roof that's almost fallen in that we don't have the money to pay for because of how the money has been spent. So we're gonna use rescue money to do that. The parks is part of the rescue money that we can do. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And on top of that, and you asked this question, but we had already planned on doing this. Ms. Bass and I and Mr. Call have been spending a lot of time to think about how we can take some of the rescue money and be able to give our county employees a sort of a bonus type pay because they didn't get a raise. And we're working on that currently also, Mr. Pauly. Any other council? I have a few comments. I do want to give us some good news. We were awarded $2.5 million from the South Carolina Department of Commerce to go toward a spec building. So that would add to the money that we got from Dominion Settlement of 2 points. So now we have 4.5 million go toward a spec building, which is really good news. Another thing is when we looked at the census, Mr. Gregory Sprouse came and talked to us about that. But I want us to understand as we look at the census and look at this county, from 2000 to 2010, we gained in population by 2.56%. But from 2010 to 2020, we lost 3,000 people. Okay, and the steepest decline was in people of color. So and talking to some of the state officials, one of the questions that must be asked is, and they said that we must ask ourselves, is why did they leave? Why did the people leave Fairfield County? So that's a question, and we must begin to ask ourselves what that question is. And then on top of that, Mr. Paul said I was talking about the fund balance and talking about the budget. Again, when you look at in 2017 having a fund balance of 21 million, then you look at in 2021 at June 30th, you only have 10 million. And then you spent another $6 million from the bond. I tell you what, people need to ask, where did the money go? Because we still have people leaving our county. So we got to think about how we look at this. Okay? Now, one of the things we will be doing is developing strategies. We one of the things, developing strategies. So how we look at, our finances in such a way that, we only purchase and do those things that we can afford to do. Now, we will, be meeting and talking about, our hope is to identify a new county administrator sometimes in the near future. Hopefully, we can have that person identified by November 1. Hopefully, we can just have, we don't know when we probably have that person in place, but hopefully we can identify, him or her by November 1. The next thing is that, it's very important that, that we go forward and, and try to do those things that we know we can do so that we can help and take care of this county. And we're going to do that. Any other council? If not, can we get a motion to go into executive session?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We go into executive session. Item A, personnel matter regarding county administrative search update pursuant to South Carolina code. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposers, nay. Can we get a motion to come out of executive session?
So move.
Second?
It's been moved and second that we come out of executive session. There was no action taken in executive session. Any discussion? All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
Opposers? So let the record show 7-0. We come out of executive session. It's now 7:32. Anything else before council?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved and second that we be adjourned.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
for the record, I don't believe any action was taken in executive session.
Oh, I stated that.
You did?
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
Missed that.
Yes, sir. All in favor, let it be known by aye.
Aye.
All opposers, nay. We now adjourn.
I started to steal your pencil.
I don't know where it is.